Hey everyone, and welcome to Got Questions. We wanted to create a space to discuss the questions that young people, in fact Gen Z, are actually asking. We love this generation, so it's time we start listening to them. The aim of this show is not to have all the answers, but to hopefully journey together in discovery.
This content has been created by Alpha Youth. Alpha, also known as the Alpha Course, is an opportunity to explore the meaning of life, faith and purpose in a safe space where no question is off the table.
That's right. And today, our conversation is circling the topics of activism, climate change and positive social change. We've titled today's episode, You're on Mute, because we know how frustrating it is when you want to say something, but you can't. For many years, young people were seen and not heard, but for Gen Z, the mute button is finally off and young people have a voice. And all around the globe, they're using it to make the world a better place.
Just look at Greta Thunberg. At just 15, she was protesting outside Swedish government about climate change and has been a force for good ever since. We believe that this is going to become the norm for Gen Z, with a whole range of movements to stand up for.
That's right. But now, before we get into the chat, we want to share with you 3 of our key cultures, which create a safe space for everyone joining us. We all have different life experiences and different values, so we're bound to have different thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. And actually, it's a good thing. We want to showcase our diversity in thought. Even if you're joining us at home or online, I encourage you to get in touch. Let us know what you think about the things that we'll be talking about. So Zande, what are our 3 key cultures?
Our key cultures are, if we disagree, we do it respectfully. Your thoughts are valued. And love listens.
Love listens, that's my favorite. All right, let's get into it. Amazing. So first question, Gen Z, you guys have got a reputation for making the world a better place. My generation, millennials, which is 25 plus, talked about it, but you guys are actually doing it. First question is, what's changed? Why is that?
I think the interesting thing is that a lot of people would think, oh, no one listens to young people now. But I think because of the age of social media, it means that anyone can have a voice, where before, maybe when you were younger, it wasn't easily accessible to kind of have a voice. And I think now, because on social media, anyone can create an account, anyone can gain followers overnight, gain likes overnight. So it's very easy to put your voice out there, whether it's agreed with, popular, unpopular. So I think that's probably the reason why a difference is being made by young people more.
Yeah, right. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that generally our generation is very justice oriented. So you hear people getting really vexed about things that maybe generations before just thought were normal. I know my parents, and my dad's mum as well. I speak to her sometimes, and there are things that she went through the war, but she just got on with it. Whereas now it's our generation, we see things we don't like, and we're very quick to pick up on it or ask other people what they think about it. And so it's almost like we've taken on this responsibility, which I think is awesome, but I guess there's an element of needing to manage it, because then we become very critical when people don't agree with what we think, and cancel culture is really big. And so I think there are 2 sides to it. I think it's amazing that we have found this niche where we do feel responsible for things happening and how we can change our lives, but I think we need to manage how we're doing that and having healthy conversations about, what to bring up and when.
Yeah, nice.
I think you make such a great point. And I think the whole element around this is that then would there be fake allyship then? Because do you feel the pressure to, because there's so many movements, I guess, and so many things to stand for,
yeah.
do you feel the pressure to then have to do it? Or do you think actually a lot of the time people are just jumping on things because it's a trend and they don't want to be the person that's not doing it and potentially cancelled? How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah.
Well, you look at people at marches and you look at what they're wearing, and they're all wearing the newest Zara, things that just come out in Zara, and you think, well, you've had to go fast fashion shopping there, and then you've turned up to march and say, hey, this is an issue. And I find with my friends, even myself, I'll look at what we're doing and what we're saying, and often they won't add up.
Right.
Because on social media, people are going, this is awful, you shouldn't be buying this, or they'll often out influencers and say, how can you be buying all these clothes and flying off to all these countries? And then you say, okay, but what have you bought in the last few weeks? Didn't you do that ASOS order? Didn't you buy that new dress from Zara that you just had to have?
But in a way, isn't it just it's impossible to keep up?
No, yeah.
How can you, no one is squeaky clean with that kind of thing?
Exactly.
And I feel if you're not, like you said, you're well, you're at the march and you've got the Zara thing on, so you're not allowed to do that. But is that okay? Okay, yeah, I'm not perfect. Maybe I do buy something from Zara, but I still think it's wrong. It doesn't mean that just because I've got one thing wrong doesn't mean that that discounts everything I say about that topic. You know what I mean? No one's perfect in that way. I think that's a difficult thing.
What about you, JC? Because I know clothing and fashion is kind of like your career, right?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm just going to speak from experience. Like for me, I got into fashion from like 16, 17, and I couldn't afford like the garments that I was after. Like I couldn't afford Yeezy or Fear of God or like Balenciaga. It wasn't in my pocket range. I couldn't afford it. So the only like look I can resort to was Zara or like H&M or even Primark, because again, I just couldn't afford the look I wanted to. So I think it's very different for everyone, but for me, I feel like I really wanted a look, and the only way I could get it was from these like fast fashion like branches. And I get that it's bad and there's a lot of things that, you know, that go into it. But I think for me at the time, it just made sense.
So you're saying it's bad, but it's not bad enough for you to
I think not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying like there's a lot of people that, you know, that if you don't buy it from these places, where are you buying it from? Yeah, you definitely can do vintage shopping, like thrift shopping, you know, get secondhand stuff, and you can definitely do that. But even that, it could be like £80 for a t-shirt or like £60 for jeans. So it's like a lot of people can't really afford these stuff. Yeah. So it's, you know, you have to balance it out.
Yeah.
Can we maybe just for the viewers, just in case they don't know what fast fashion, slow fashion is, who wants to explain what that is?
So fast fashion is the idea that we're consuming at a really, really fast pace. And rather than the opposite, slow fashion, so, you know, you get your clothing from places that like charity shops, or you go thrifting, or anything secondhand. It has, or even if you have a bit more money, you can buy sustainable clothing. And fast fashion, basically, loads of high street stores are fast fashion oriented. It means that they can get their clothes at a really cheap price from countries that don't have a minimum wage, generally Bangladesh, Pakistan, and those countries, don't have a minimum wage, so the companies are able to kind of exploit them, make them work really long hours, and then they come into stores in the Western world, and we get to pick them up for a really cheap price. We get to look good in them, but we don't actually know where they came from.
Amazing.
I feel as if there's like those big clocks now, isn't it? Where it's like, this is how many years we've got left before we can reverse things. Do you think we're too far gone? Jonathan, this is for you. Or do you think like, actually, if we start doing certain things, we could reverse or gain more time, if that's even a thing?
I'm no climate change expert by any means, but I think, I feel like, if anything, we're at the verge, in the sense of, I say personally, I do think we're potentially too far gone, in the sense of like the damage has been done. But I think there is an awareness that this generation does have. And so like the effects that will be coming in the consecutive years to come, I do feel like they can be maintained, and there can still be like hope for those who will be most affected by it in low economic countries and whatnot. But I don't know, when you talk about the topic, it can be hard to try and find hope in it. But no, I think there's a belief that as a humankind, we can come together and somehow find some sort of happy ending.
How are you guys finding the weather? Like, summer just gone.
So sad.
Yeah.
No summer. But I mean, like you were saying, I know statistically we are too far gone. Like, all of the researchers have said we're too far gone. But I mean, of course, like you said, you've got to hold on to hope. And obviously believing in God, like we know that he is above all of these things, you know? So it's like, I guess, working out what we can partner with and how we can like make our differences. And everyone will say, you know, your small differences won't change anything. But I believe they do, you know, whether that's going vegan because you want to support, you know, climate change that way.
Becca, thank you so much. We're going to be hearing more from everyone about this. Right now, we're going to head to our regional Alpha Youth Directors who are gathering over Zoom to ask some questions about activism, climate change, and positive social change. Check it out.
I think a quote that represents it really well is the ex-US President Barack Obama saying, "We are the first generation to feel the effects of climate change and the last generation that can do anything about it."
Climate change is important to me because I've realized that the effects of it are like extremely like severe. Like people don't realize exactly what climate change is and how it affects us all. Like if I want to have children one day, or if I want my children to have children one day, I mean, we need to stop this deforestation because like they're not going to be able to breathe clean air and they're not going to be able to drink clean water, and that's like an important issue for me.
If the earth is a gift to us, then it's something to be managed and taken care of. And if there are risks that we have identified, then we should be looking to the reality of those risks and not ignore them.
A huge chunk of climate issues are due to large corporations, large emissions of waste, but I also believe firmly that for as long as you're a human being, you have a responsibility to the planet to do your own part, whether it is to use recycle bags or to convert to metal straws, sustainable packaging, so on and so forth. Yeah.
It's really important, I believe, that God's created the world, and therefore it should be something that we take into account as we think about our own world and think about how God created it and made it for us to love it.
But I really wonder, what more can we truly do? When we think of recycling as well, it can be expensive. It means I need to get different bins. It means I need to find a different way of disposing it. And without a lot of disposable income, in my mind, I care about climate change and I want to do something about it. But I'm not sure that I have the disposable income to be able to actually effect the changes that needs to happen.
I think it's also become a wake-up call to a lot of youths, especially with what Brista said. So many scientists and researchers are right now just blasting so many pieces of news to youths, and youths have these, they have access to social media, and reading those sort of things, it's knowing that, hey, this is what your future is going to be. Is this really what you want? You know, choose sustainable products and choose to, you know, make the world a better place for the future generation, for your kids, for your grandkids one day. So.
How good was that conversation? I love hearing from our global family. But we're going to carry on the chat, and we have got a guest with us, none other than Laura Young. Can we welcome her on the show?
Hello.
Travelled all the way down from Scotland.
Yeah.
I've got your bio here. Oh. So with us, we have an environmentalist, public speaker, zero waste advocate, sustainability graduate, spoken on the BBC, done a TED Talk, and is the COP coordinator for Tear Fund. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like my whole CV.
Amazing. Did do a bit of stalking. What is a COP coordinator?
Okay, so COP stands for Conference of the Parties, which is the big United Nations climate change conference they do every year. So 2021 was COP26, so we have it in November in Glasgow, where I'm from. So, yeah.
Right, okay, well, we're going to dive down a little bit more into that. But I think we just got to open it up for questions. Now, Max has got a question for you, and he wants to ask it in his best Scottish accent, if you allow that.
Oh, I do. Well, you see, well, I asked this question earlier, but didn't get a clear answer. But so you know, climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it. Isn't it meant to get hotter? So why are we having a...
Wait, we'll just pause there. What do you think? Good accent, bad accent?
That was really good. That was really good.
Okay,
it's meant to be getting hotter, isn't it? Like, why, like, global warming, it's not very warm. So I don't understand.
All right, so when we talk about the climate changing, we experience loads of different things with that. So there might be more rain or less rain, more flooding, less flooding. It has impacts all around the world. But one of the easiest ways to talk about it is that we know that temperatures around the globe have been being recorded for years and years and years. And we know that over the past 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, since records began, we know that the planet in total is getting warmer. So we started measuring this kind of pre-industrial time. And currently we sit about 1.2, 1.3 degrees warmer than that. I mean, I'm from Scotland, so I'm like, that sounds great. But actually, when you do like a global context, even a point of a degree out of kilter, you're suddenly seeing total changes in ice, glaciers, in weather. And so global warming is like the easiest way to talk about the whole impact. But the number that you need to keep in mind when we talk about global warming is this 1.5 degrees. So the IPCC are this big organisation of scientists who worked out that if we hit 1.5 or 2 degrees, so we're quite close, that's when we start seeing even more catastrophic impacts. So like just this year we've had wildfires, flooding, like all of that will become worse. But global warming is like the easiest way to talk about all this stuff.
That's very well explained, thank you. Thank you.
And we always talk about like this issue, but I never really know what to do about it because it sounds like such a big issue. And in your bio, it said that you're a zero waste person. Does that mean you don't have a bin? Like what's going on?
Yeah, no bins. Oh, I mean, I think all of us, like every single person, we make up the system of the world. Like we make up our local communities, we make up our country, the UK, the world. So we all play a part in being that system, and we can like change the way we live as individuals, but then influence everyone around us. So when you think about how we can play our part, like when I hear stuff like climate change or any other justice issue, I cannot sit still. I'm like, I need to do something. So you can do loads of different things. So you can think about the waste that you produce, like plastic. We've all seen these documentaries, try and reduce it. Think about your carbon footprint. You know, I got the train down to London, I didn't fly, so that was a choice that I made. But there's also other things, like you can talk to the government in your country, you can talk to your church leader about this kind of stuff. And so as an individual, you can do all of these lifestyle actions or little bits of activism and kind of make those big changes. And when enough of us do it, so if there's 8 of us here doing something, if we all go and tell 2 people, then suddenly there's, you know, thousands by the end of it. That starts to create this big culture and system change that we need.
Really cool.
Is there anything like you would say is the simple first step? Like if you want to start making a change, just do this first thing first, and then you can get into it and gradually keep going.
Yeah, you're right. Because it's such a big thing. It's like, okay, where do I start? And then you recycle for a week, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, nothing's happening.
You know,
I mean, do you know what? Props to, if you're already listening to this conversation, that's one thing. Like, that's something. And you can go away and, you know, think, I was listening to this amazing conversation about it. I think you just look at your own life. So 3 years ago, I started this journey to sustainability, and I thought to myself, like, what could I do? Let's start with something. So I started with waste, and I did this waste audit of my life, where I sort of like collected all my waste and was like, what is it? What's in here? I was in my final year uni, addicted to meal deals. So I was like, right, maybe I'll work on packed lunches and like try and reduce that. And then I thought to myself, so actually, I made a pretty easy one in 2020. I was like, I'm not gonna fly, which turned out to be really easy because nobody flew. But actually, like making these small little commitments, but you can then think about the food you eat, the fashion that you wear, like how you can kind of be a little bit more sustainable in all these parts. But then also you can do boring activism, like talk to your MP, change who you bank with, look at ethical pensions, but like all really important stuff that you can kind of do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen, but Cristiano Ronaldo had like a press conference, right? And he moved the Coke bottle and replaced it with water. Do you think it's like the influencer's job to really, you know, like show people how to be better?
That was like the best 3 seconds ever, just to see that. Because actually it made a huge thing. You know, he was doing a conference that also that audience, people who love football might not necessarily be interested in Coke or the environment. And so I think it is, because in the same way that if we follow influencers online, whether it's a fashion influencer, a food influencer, you know, a politician, whoever, actually they influence us about everything else, like what to wear, what to eat, where to go out for meals in London or whatever. And actually it's really important they influence us about the important stuff as well. But also because I know that when I talk about this to you guys or to people that are on my social media or even my church or whoever, it's sometimes people who are already on board. So we need to break out of, you know, you call it an echo chamber. Like, how do you access the people that have never heard about this before? And Cristiano Ronaldo did that in 3 seconds and has kind of started this conversation. So we 100% need sports people, actors and actresses, like all of these people to really do that to help get the message out.
I can see that you use your social media like really well, and really challenges me. Definitely. You know, when it comes to like maybe some of the brands that you call out, and we don't need to name them on the show, but I guess what's your goal in kind of like, you know, saying some of that stuff?
It's just like customer feedback, isn't it? It's like, you know, I talk about different brands, whether it's like a food company or a fashion brand, and most of the time it comes from a place like, I love your clothes, please help me buy them, and please help pay people a fair wage and treat the environment, you know, carefully when you're making them. And it comes from a place of love, and And I think there's now this term, instead of calling out, it's like calling in. It's like calling them into being more sustainable, being more ethical. And I just love doing that, because actually we all want to still buy clothes and express ourselves in a fashion way, but we don't want it to be harming people or planet. So it's just so important to be doing that. And I think when you engage with smaller brands, it's so much easier, because you're like, hey, you're just at the beginning of this journey, let me help you. But also the big ones, it's like, in the same way that Cristiano Ronaldo can move a Coke bottle and make such a huge impact, you know, big high street fashion brands or food brands could make one small decision that like blows out of the water everything that I could do. But it's amazing to see that.
One of my favorite things is that what you do is you don't let any brand like hide behind any like catchy, like trendy, I don't know, persona, like greenwashing and all of those kind of things. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing, because I think people can quickly think, okay, I'll just jump onto this and we'll become a better company. But I love that you actually go, no, I understand what you're doing, but let's do this properly. And I really love that. I think one of the key things, we spoke about it before, was, do you think like changing things is actually attainable? Because I guess we've gone to some degree, but can we come back? Can we live better going forward? Like, what would you say is actually attainable going forward?
We've got to, like, we just have to. But one of the amazing things when you talk about sustainability, climate change, climate justice is, first of all, we have to do this. Like, it's already urgent. Because part of my job is with Tier Fund, and we just hear stories day in, day out of people who, they're not going to be impacted by climate change. They are being impacted. Like, they've already had to move. They've already had to change their lives. But one of the amazing things is we already have the answers. We've got the solutions. Like, we know what we need to do. We just need governments and businesses to really play into that and actually say, we're going to stop deforesting parts of the world. We're going to move away from fossil fuels. We're going to bring in ethical supply chains. We're going to do all of this stuff. And it's amazing, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're actually going back to the old wheel, which was working really, really well. And so that's why I have hope, because the solutions are there. And that's why big things like COP26, or when the G7 meet, or, you know, even when churches are talking around the world, like, we've got the answers. We just need to really, like, get them funded, get them all the right equipment and infrastructure, and really empower people around the world. And also the best thing is, here in London, the UK and Scotland, like, we also don't have to do it ourselves. Like, our global neighbours, they've also got the answers. We just need to make sure they've got what they need to do that. And that's probably one of the best reasons why it is 100% attainable. We just need to move like yesterday.
I think it's really refreshing that the way you put it, because I think in a lot of people's experience, it's a bit of a, you know, some people maybe are put off by it because they think, well, I can't be perfect. And, you know, I think it's the whole thing of, well, there's always going to be something that I'm not doing to help the environment. You know, it's impossible to be completely squeaky clean. I think we were talking a bit before, like, unless you lived in a shed and grow your own vegetables and, like, you know, which some people might feel called to that, but I personally don't. So how do I kind of enter into that community of wanting to make a difference without having to feel kind of judged if I, you know, have to get on an airplane sometimes, you know what I mean?
And I think that's it. You know, no one is asking you to be perfect, because if you do everything right, create no waste, have zero carbon footprint, there's still 7 billion people left to kind of do that work. But actually, so we all are influencers. We all have this sphere of influence. So thinking about myself, so like, I live with people, I work with people, I go to a church, I have a workplace, I have a friend group, I have a sports team. All of those places are like unique to me and people I can have conversations with and open with. And so, you know, in the past, I've had conversations with my employer to say, hey, how can we go zero waste as an office? One conversation, but gets 300 disposable cups sorted in a minute. I can talk to my church leader and say, hey, would you mind us doing a creation care sermon series? And boom, that's 300 people hearing a message about how the gospel is about creation care as well. So you can have all these conversations that make a bigger difference. So it means if I do get a disposable coffee or have to take a flight, it's not all down to me and it's not the guilt that I'm taking. So it's like taking on that responsibility, taking on that, you know, the call that God's given us to look after this planet and look after the planet for our neighbours, but then also like bringing people with me and making a bigger impact that way.
Great, Laura. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we give Laura a round of applause? Thank you, Laura. Excellent. And also, why don't we close in prayer? Would anybody like to pray?
Yes, Jonathan, go on.
So yeah, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this space. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about climate change, its effects on the world, and how we can do all these things to create a better tomorrow, Father. And Lord, I want to pray specifically for the youth of the world, Lord, for Generation Z, Father. May they do better from the generations from before, but as mentors, may we be able to guide them step by step and help them glorify your name. We pray this in your holy name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. We hope you've enjoyed our chat today. We'd love to hear from you, so please do get in touch.
Yeah, and if you've never joined us on an Alpha course, they take place all around the globe, and they're not just for youth. Everyone of every age, background, and experience can be part of one. They're strictly inclusive, so why not join us?
If you want to know more, head to alpha.org/youth and check out our social media channels. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
It was really good.
It's meant to be getting hotter, isn't it? Like, why, like, global warming, it's not very warm.